If you haven't met me, don't know who I am, I'm Mary Moss, fondly known as the Word Wizard. Honestly, I don't remember who gave me that nickname, but somewhere along the line, I decided to embrace it. In fact, I have an official Word Wizard hat. I wear the hat when I'm writing, and I want to find just the right words because it reminds me that words really are magical and that I have the power to use those words to comfort, to encourage, to inspire, to heal, and sometimes maybe change a life. Now, today isn't about the hat. I just wanted to introduce myself. Today is about a story that's been years in the making. So many years. And I honestly can't tell you how relieved and joyful I am that woman at the woman afflicted for 12 years, the hem of his cloak, has officially been published. Whew. I wish I could tell you that this book came together quickly. It did not. It took years. But before I tell you why, let me tell you something about the journey that brought me here. I've always been fascinated by the women of the Bible, the unnamed women in particular. Their stories were important enough to preserve for thousands of years, yet we never learned their names. And for a long time, I wondered why. Then one day it occurred to me that maybe they remain nameless so that their stories become our stories. That changed my perspective completely. And it inspired an entire series of books. Hi, thanks for joining me. My first book, Woman at the Well, Thirsting for Grace, was published in 2008. It speaks to anyone who's wrestled with faith, loneliness, regret, or just longing for a fresh start. It's an invitation to come to the well, to lay down your burdens, and to discover the living water that your soul has been thirsting for. 10 years later, in 2018, I published Woman with the Alabaster Jar, A Life Poured Out. This book came from one of the hardest seasons of my life following the death of my mom. And it became a journey not only of grief, but of surrender and healing and discovering God's presence, even in our heartbreak. So you've probably noticed a pattern. I have fallen in love with the unnamed women of the Bible. Each one of them teaches us something different about faith, courage, hope, and the heart of God. And now the newest book continues that journey. But this one was different. I began writing Woman Afflicted for 12 years, just before COVID. And that changed all of our lives, right? Like so many people, I thought life would pause for a short time, everything would get back to normal. Instead, everything shut down. Everything slowed down, including me. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you can remember and had the same experience. Other days, I couldn't simply write. I couldn't think. I didn't even know what to say. Weeks went by, then months. I'd look at my manuscript and wonder, honestly, if I would ever, ever finish writing this book. And some days I didn't even want to because I was living out my own version of it. For me, affliction didn't look like personal bleeding as it did for the woman in Scripture. It looked like isolation, like loneliness, fear, discouragement, and honestly, at times, even low grade depression. It looked like wondering where God was in the middle of so much uncertainty. There were days when I honestly questioned whether I would ever have the emotional energy to finish the book. Then one day I realized something that completely changed how I saw what I was writing. I wasn't simply telling her story anymore, the woman's story. I was discovering that in some ways it had become my story too. The woman in the gospel had suffered for 12 years. Every doctor had failed her. She was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Because of the law, she was considered unclean at the time. She lived in isolation, and she knew what it felt like to be pushed aside, to feel forgotten. And yet, she never completely gave up hope. After 12 years of disappointment, she heard one day that Jesus was coming through town. And she believed that if she could so much as touch the hem of his cloak, that would be enough. That image stayed with me while I was writing, because there were days when my own faith didn't feel big or bold. It wasn't mountain moving faith, it was simply reaching. And maybe that's what faith looks like sometimes: taking one more step, writing one more paragraph, praying one more prayer, getting out of bed one more morning. Believing that even when we can't see or feel the healing yet, Jesus is still near enough to reach. Looking back now, I'm actually grateful this book took so long to write. Not because I enjoyed the journey. I certainly did not. I'm glad because I couldn't have written this same book 5 years ago. I hadn't lived it yet. These pages weren't written only from study and research. They were written from waiting and questioning and the quiet faithfulness of God through a very difficult season. I think that's why I'm so drawn to these unnamed women. Their stories remind me that God sees people others overlook. And maybe that's why their names were never recorded. Because this story isn't about one woman who lived 2,000 years ago. It's about every woman who has ever asked, does God still see me? Is healing still possible? Can hope survive one more day? If you've ever asked those questions, this book is for you. I wrote it for you. My prayer is that these pages will reach beyond the pages to remind you that hope is never beyond your reach, that Jesus still sees you, still invites you to come to him. Sometimes sometimes all we can do is reach for faith, right? And sometimes that's enough. Well, if this message has spoken to your heart, I'd be honored to send you a signed copy. You can order directly from my website, themarymoss.com, when you place your order. There's a space where you can tell me who to sign it to, whether you'd like me to include a personal message, or whether or not you're sending it as a gift. I'll put my website address in the comments at the end of the live. If you'd like to own a complete set, all three of them, let me know, and I have a special offer for you. In case you have any questions or want more details, I'm going to not only drop my website, but also my email, wordwizard@themarymoss.com, in the comments. Just shoot me a message and I'll get back to you. Well, thank you for celebrating this day with me, and thank you for allowing me the privilege of sharing this journey with you. I pray that you will always remember, no matter how long you've been waiting, no matter how heavy your burden, no matter how impossible your circumstances may seem, there is still hope, and there is still grace. Sometimes all it takes is reaching for the hem of his cloak. Until next time, keep reaching. Signing off for now.